Welcome, everybody, to this special edition of Invest in the Future podcast. And we are here with four of the six original Andela team, which is about as much as you're going to get for now, it's a majority. We meet the quorum. So I think we're good. And the rest you hear about later. But thank you so much to Christina Sass, to Nadaya Negesi, to Bryce Nkengsa, and of course myself. Even though I'm not going to be doing much of the talking this time. Welcome break for everybody on the podcast. We're going to talk about Andela, perhaps one of the most transformational businesses that we've had on the continent, which is very much the beginning of this new era of technology and investing and talent and going global. And it's been an incredible experience. And what makes this edition particularly special is that today we're celebrating 10 years of Andela, 10 whole years since we first came on the continent to start to spread this gospel of talent and opportunity. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of that in this episode, and we're going to keep it very casual, just talk through a few things, and then we'll take it from there. So without any further ado, I think the first thing I'm going to ask my dear co-founders and friends to do is to answer 3 questions for us in one take.
Hit me.
What did you do at Andela? What are you doing now? And how did you end up in this crazy bunch? So I'm gonna start obviously with Mama Sass, as we fondly call her. So Christina, you go first.
Sure. Okay. So my role at Andela was co-founder for life and COO for many years, and then president. And as COO, my mandate was to launch our country offices. So mostly focus on the talent side of the business, but then also supporting and working with Jeremy as we were raising money and kind of building momentum to support the company. But in each country, so we started out in Lagos because, he's connected to 173 million of and
all the Nigerians, every single one.
Makes so much sense. And that was 1,000% the right move. And so my job was to kind of go in and find extraordinary country leadership to support all of the training and placement that was going on in the early days to build up not just an office, but like, how do we become the beating heart, the center of the tech ecosystem in every place that we work? And we did that. We then expanded into Kenya. By that team, we had an expansion team that reported into me, that moved into Uganda and eventually Ghana and Egypt too. So that was really as COO, and then later as president was really focused on closing deals, being out there speaking, telling the world all about Andela and ensuring that our culture in every single country was really sound. So, and in between, we were co-founders, so we were everything. In the early days, we were the janitors and the HR people, all the amazing things. Okay, so in between there, I'll be really brief. I, since Andela, I have basically been investing in and coaching founders of companies like Andela in the beginning, workforce development focused. How are we finding extraordinary talent all over the world and moving it into not just jobs, but like fulfilling lifelong career paths? So trying to find those companies, invest in them, and do really intense executive coaching to help those teams succeed. The same kind of coaching that we got at Andela. And then, and now I am just about to step into, I'm really thrilled to be stepping into a huge role as president and CEO of the International Youth Foundation. So I'm incoming right now. I'll officially start in June, and that is just another continuation of this mission. Thank you. Again,
Amazing.
It's like, how do we find brilliant people and move them into jobs worldwide? So I very much see it as an extension of our mission at Andela.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Christina. I'm going to come back to how you dropped out of PhD to join Andela. Right. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we'll go to Bryce. So, what did you do at Andela, and what are you doing now?
So at Andela, as Christina mentioned, in the early days, it was kind of a bunch of different things. I was heavily involved in figuring out our early business model as far as finding and sourcing jobs on Elance and Odes, to be able to prove that we could find technical work for our cohorts that were training in Lagos. So I was very much involved in the sales process of that, but also doing those jobs and then evolving into figuring out how do we place long-term developers on long-term engagements. And then later on, my role moved into more internal facing, where I started building out the engineering team for Andela, which was tasked with starting building a lot of the systems to be able to operate more effectively and at scale. So that included learning products to support the training, included customer-facing products to collect customer feedback about our engagement, and also anything in between, and connecting all those systems and gathering all the data to be able to create this Andela engine to be able to scale with our processes. So over that time, I built a distributed engineering team of about 40 engineers across Lagos, Nairobi, Kampala, and the US. Now I've been continuing to hone in on my technical leadership skills. I've worked at a number of Silicon Valley companies in the last 3 years. I've also been angel investing in a couple of startups. I've been consulting as a technical consultant for a couple of African tech startups that I've gone through YC. And I've been speaking as well at tech conferences. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Fantastic. I don't know if you're allowed to talk about your new adventure yet, but maybe
Maybe a little bit.
maybe a little bit later. Okay, cool. Teaser.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least,
So,
the Nadaya.
yeah. I'm Nadir. At Andela, my role was training software developers and getting them ready to be, as we called it, world class. It was a lot of fun. I think I had the most fun job out of everyone, because I got to hang out with our developers almost every day. And now I started a company called Eden Life. Eden Life is focused on making life 10 times better through different lifestyle products and services. And what was the last question? Like,
What are you doing? Yeah, you've answered both.
How'd you
Yeah.
get this crazy?
I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get back to that. I figured out maybe we could get only a little bit out in one breath. So we'll get back to that. So I'm gonna start with you, Mama Sash, right? Like, and really this question goes, for everyone. It's like, the way I look at the team at Andela, everybody was doing something that they really believed in before they were like, I need to drop this and go and do this. I want you to walk us through not just like what were you doing and what did you drop so you could do Andela, but like why?
I always tell people when I tell people my founding story, I'm like, you should hear it from every Andela founder, because we just are like this very magical, weird puzzle, that fit together. So here's my story. Jeremy and I knew each other for years through the Summit series, through other events, and we were both education ed tech experts. And so we ended up speaking on panels or seeing each other. And suffice to say, we had radically different approaches to ed tech. And so we challenged each other. We had like common respect and would kind of joke, but I would always, tell him about 2U. I was like, it's extraordinary what you're doing. And why won't you come help me think about how to apply this to places in the world where there's like unprecedented talent and much, much, much less access? And that was the nice version. What I really said is like, dude, don't tell me about access to education at Georgetown. Like everybody at Georgetown is going to be freaking fine. Let's go out to places where, we need to get those people. And so he was very gracious about my kidding. But eventually I did, was working for Rita Roy at the MasterCard Foundation. And I invited him to come and speak to a group of extraordinary leaders across the continent that were all thinking about youth employment and education into employment. And I said, come and let's talk about a partnership. And so from what I experienced, Jeremy and I prepped a lot for that. And in the room, we kind of pitched, hey, Ashesi University had just launched an engineering degree program. They had 40 engineers in it. And what I said to Rita and to others in the room was like, let's apply the 2U model. Let's figure it out a way. And let's train 400 engineers tomorrow. We know how many engineers are needed across the world. 2U has done exactly this for nursing at Georgetown, for business at UNC. Let's look at this. And in true entrepreneur fashion, like everybody got very excited, and that failed. That did not work. But Jeremy, I hauled him all around Nairobi, and he told me about Eid, who he was mentoring and had known, and was like, this guy's doing something similar. And Jay was in this weird place in life where he was really thinking about his next huge thing. 2U is, in the race to IPO. It was like a big milestone, but he was like, I think I'm ready for my next huge thing. So I captured him in this moment. And he saw the talent. He saw the possibility. So we got back. We tried all these meetings with 2U and MasterCard and blah, blah, blah. No. Finally, he was like, Sass, what if we just build it? What if we build it? And how would we pay for it? What would replace tuition and blah, blah, blah. We started brainstorming. And then he said, why don't we connect with this guy, E, that I've been mentoring for a while, that's doing something in this space. Why don't we put out a pilot and see what happens? Like, why don't we just go rogue and do this? And I was like, I'm all in. And so you guys were all in Mississauga or Toronto. I was up at the MasterCard Foundation, also in Toronto, almost monthly. And we met up. We met up at a space.
Yep.
And we bought Nat a one-way ticket. Anyway, that's how I got involved. And I'll come back to my moment where I had already been accepted to a PhD program at Harvard, which, it was never in my life that I think I would be in the dropout club. But this is a cool thing to do in tech. Actually, I'll tell you about how that day came. Over to you.
Okay. So Nat, over to you. How did you get on a one-way ticket to Lagos? In the wrong direction.
See you later.
The best direction. It's like Christina said. This was it was a confluence of serendipity for all our life paths. I'd say. For me, I mean, we were building Fora together. Myself, Ian, Bryce, Ian, out of Toronto. At the time, he was already in Lagos selling our products. Then, one random day, Ian come and say, by the ways, actually, what happened was we got into an accelerator program.
Yes.
Right. We got
Extreme Startups.
Yes, we got into that program, Extreme Startups, and they brought us to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've been trying to reach.
Yeah, Jeremy. I was trying to reconnect.
Yes. And on the last day or so, it finally connected. Ian and I had already gone back to Toronto. Jay and E met, and then he was like, "By the ways, like
after this meeting,
we met this guy. We're gonna try to work together. What do you think? Like, let's see how it goes." The next month, Jeremy's in Toronto.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had that brainstorm for 3 days about what it would look like if we flipped education on its head and focused on creating job opportunities for people using software development as the primary skill. I'm like, okay, let's see how it goes. I think like for me, like the biggest thing was always say yes, right? Always say yes. Always say yes. Then the second time when Jeremy and Christina came to Toronto, I think we're at the point where we're like, yeah, let's do this. and it was like a joke, right? We were laughing about it, and then next thing
The ticket was bought.
one-way flight ticket bus to Lagos. So for me at the time, I was saying yes to this incredible mission. At the same time, I was saying no to my parents' desires for me to remain in Canada and to get a passport or to do my masters. And I think it's the best yes. It's the best yes that I've said. And if there's any lesson in this story, is that the magic is always on the side of the unknown.
Yeah.
And so I will always recommend to follow one's heart for these things.
So Bryce.
Wow. I mean, what more can I add? I think I was just, as we were working with on Fora, and everything was happening, and E was meeting with Jeremy, and we're finding out that we're now embarking on this journey, and then we meet Jeremy, we meet Christina, and then we're starting to think about what it will look like to build Andela. And one moment that stood out to me was how quickly we operated, and how fast we all came together. The one-way ticket was one thing, but the other thing that I remember was Jeremy looking at myself and Nad and was like, "We need somebody to train the first class." And he was just like, "Who has done any kind of training or has ever done any kind of workshop between the two of you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did some in university at Waterloo." He's like, "Okay, cool, you go." I was like, "What is happening?" I was like, "What is happening right now?" And and it was just like
we moved at some incredible speed, because that meeting
at incredible speed.
So the meeting with Jeremy happened March 19th, if I remember correctly.
First of all.
Yeah. The meeting in Toronto happened in April, and we launched May 18th.
We launched May 18th, and when I brought Jeremy to Nairobi, it was January. So January, we tried this big collaboration that didn't work, and then he was like, "I'm calling you. Let's do this on our own." March, April, and then boom, May, and here we are. Yeah. This is the anniversary.
May. May. Wow. So speed, right? Speed, super important.
Yeah,
super important.
It's just like crazy, like momentum and adrenaline. Yes, it was.
It's incredible.
Very apparent.
Yeah. What would you say the moment of clarity was? Like, for me, I mean, I can start with this one. For me, the day I was just like, okay, what the heck just happened? I was going through the motions, to be honest, because I was like, we're a startup, we're struggled a little bit, we're a little bit out of options. I liked the idea. I thought Jeremy, I still look up to Jeremy. So if Jeremy had told me, go build a dog petting business, I'd have been like, that sounds like a great idea. I was like, So at that point, I wasn't thinking too much. But I think the day that I was stunned was when we put out this tweet when we said no experience required, and I saw 700 applications in like a week. I was like, what on earth is going on? From a Twitter post. But I think everybody must have had like different moments of clarity, because that was like one good one.
No, mine is very similar. So I was going to tell you my
Tell me, what was that?
so the breaking the contract with Harvard moment was, so we put out cohort 1 happened. We traveled, we met them, we saw the energy with Nad in the room. We just, it was definitely happening. But then you put out the second cohort, and I think we tried a little harder. We put it on Jobberman. We went to some, relevant universities or whatever. That's the one where we'd contracted Plum.io, woman-owned business from
Canada.
Toronto. Yes, from Toronto. She's awesome. And then, but then when we put it out, we watched the numbers and we were like, this is crazy. At that time we were like, maybe we'd come up with Andela. Jeremy and I thought about it. We came up with that name on the phone, but we certainly didn't have a website. We didn't have anything, but we just saw. And this is when Plum called us and said, you have, what the hell is this job? You guys are crashing all of our systems because so many people are applying to this job. 2,500 people applied to cohort 2 Lagos. And then they said that you have 48 candidates in this pool that by our numbers, we would consider to be in the top 2% of problem solvers in the world. And that was when I was like, I'm quitting my job. I'm quitting my PhD program. Like, it's going to work. It's going to happen. We knew it. I mean, I think so many times it was like, follow the talent, follow the incredible talent. And it was like, we put out a call, talent answered, and we're going to do this. And I remember being like, I called my mom, I called Harvard, and I was like, I'm not coming. I was like, this may not work, and maybe I'll call you back and we'll just, deal with it. But like right now, this is not. And it was an education into employment PhD program.
Mhm.
I was like, I'm not going to study it. I'm going to go
Do it.
That's when I joined the Dropout Club.
The follow the talent piece was like a huge moment for me, because like when he had put that Twitter post and we got like 700 applications or interest with that, we didn't have a website or anything. And then 2 weeks later, Nat is in the classroom, like leading a cohort. And I'm just like, so you applied to this program. There was no website, nothing. And you had the faith to do it. And I was like, yep.
In July, we're there.
Yeah.
Desks lined up in that rental space.
Yeah.
The middle of Ebola. And cohort 2 was Tolu. Cohort 2 was Kenny. Cohort 2 was like and we had like
General
we had
GMT,
Prosper and Godson training. Like we had the best trainers. Like, I mean, I was like, I cannot believe that this caliber of talent is in this room, and you saw it. I mean, I mean, what was it like to train them? I mean,
wow.
I have recordings of you. By the way.
Oh, good.
Yes.
We should make
NFTs. We should.
Yeah. The brilliance was incredible, and aside from just the raw intellect of people that we're working with, what really stood out to me was the grit of everybody involved. Like we had people coming from the furthest ends of Lagos to Ikoyi every morning before 7 a.m.
Pressed and dressed, ready to get
consistently. It's like that whole thing about like if you keep waiting for the ideal conditions, then you never do anything, because those, looking back, those conditions were definitely not.
We had to choose whether we wanted lights and AC or internet. We could have both. And then I remember upstairs at that rental spot, rain came pouring through
the ceiling caved in.
Everybody eyes on the prize.
Yes.
Want to make world-class developers. The developers are like, we want to be world-class. And everyone's like, yes, that's what we're doing. Everything else, what we're doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was an incredible beginning. So, I mean, just thinking about the journey over the last 10 years, right? What would you say perhaps you would have done differently at any point in time?
Long list.
But your audience is founders who want to build the next Andela.
So so I think somewhere along the way, we met this incredible coach that we worked with for many, many years, Jeff Hunter and his team at Talentism, that we're so close with. And Jeff taught me so many things, but I think the in a startup context, what he taught me that was most valuable was your entire job is to learn faster. Like, you will be defined by the rate at which you grow. And the crazy thing about startups is that, you'll make a leap and then boom, the entire context shifts beneath you. You have no money. You have lots of money. You have no senior team. You have a very senior team. And in each of those moments, you have to kind of radically accept yourself and what you're like and design effectively around yourself. And that is the process of being like, okay, now I have a very junior team that has very little experience. What am I like in that context? How do I learn faster? So I'm not just resolving this conflict with said junior team member. I'm learning how to do it. What is the process I'm going to go through to get through this thing? And then you got a very senior team member. It's got 20 more years experience, and you're trying to explain that's not okay in our culture, but you're a very seasoned team member. That is like a completely different context too. But again, don't just handle the problem of the day. Learn about how to handle the problem of the day and learn how to do it faster. Like that process of you are the project of learning and leveling up over and over and over again. And it doesn't get comfortable. It's not, startup world is not like, now we're coasting. Maybe that comes 15 years in, but it's a constant process. And that, just going through that process many, many times and getting more comfortable with it is a thing I talk to founders about all the time.
Anybody else?
I'll speak to the technical founders because I think one of the things that I learned during the journey at Andela is the importance of the early technical decisions and how that impacts the business. It is very important to think about when you're like building your product, think about how the architecture will make things easy to change, because as the business changes, things need to change in your product. And at Andela, I found that it was very difficult to change things because of the early technical decisions we had made that were not the best. And looking back, that slowed down the evolution of the business. So it is very important to always think about that. Like change is constant when it comes to a startup, and that trickles down to your product and the technical decisions that you're making. So always think about, is this going to be easy to change? Because that's the thing that's going to be constant all throughout.
For me, especially now running Eden Life as a business, it would be talking more about the business side of things with the whole company. At Andela, in the early days, we focused heavily on our mission and on our story, and only a smaller group of people were focused on the business of how we earn money and how we keep the lights on. And inevitably, we as we were scaling, we got to it's so easy to go from like $0 in revenue to 1 million.
Especially when Jeremy is your co-founder.
And then going from 1 million to 2 million.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Yeah.
It's minor, but it's not the worst. And then going from 10 million to 20.
Across the chasm.
Yes, you have to transform. And then at that point, we had to start making we had to start making some serious business decisions. And not everybody was aware of those realities. And so when it was time to make those difficult choices, we definitely experienced some friction.
Yeah.
So the key learning there for me is to always be more transparent about the business realities of the operations.
Yeah. And speaking of those realities, right? We're a business that evolved very fast through multiple different phases. I mean, I'd love, what was your perspective of those pivots, right?
Yeah.
And how should founders think about those? Because like you said, change is going to be a constant with any kind of business, but most particularly with a business in Africa, right? And this type of business. Christina, president. We don't ask easy questions on this podcast.
So like plus 1,000 to what Nad said. We ran up against like the realities of what could scale no matter, you read and hear and see this about founding companies. You have to kill your darlings is a kind of common phrase, but like there are things that you absolutely love and cling to that allowed you to be a magnet for the right kind of person or whatever that just don't scale at the speed of everything else. So I think those are some of the hardest moments in scaling Andela was like we placed mid-level developers, flew off the shelf, like couldn't keep enough. And it was much harder to place junior developers. So I think communicating with the team about that. I mean, one of my big learnings is we grew so fast and did not really build up a management layer fast enough to just communicate. Here are the goals. Here's why the goals are changing. Does everybody understand? Are we aligned? Do we know what the new reality is? So it's kind of on the more boring business, side. But when you face a hard reality, see it clearly, own it. And so what I tell founders now is do not come out the gate saying, this is the new direction of the entire company. You say, this is an experiment that I'm very excited to run. and here's what we want to learn from this experiment. And it might be the new direction and it might not, but we have to experiment. We have to experiment with it. And then everything everybody says, keep your finger right on the pulse of the client, be listening, actively listening all the time, and figure out a way to run constant experiments and then report back. This is what happened, and this is how we're updating our whole operating model based on it.
Yeah.
We didn't do that well, fast. I could look back and find many times where I wish we'd done that.
Yeah.
I'd say like for pivots, there's this thing. What is that saying about the destination can remain final and unchangeable, or the why can remain final, but like how you get there, the how, you have to remain flexible. For Andela, it was always about talent.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was always about talent and creating opportunity for talent. And we actually ran through different ways of doing that. So the first one we started with was
Elance and Odessa.
Yes. Oh my God.
I remember Bryce bidding for jobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And winning them.
Yeah.
Winning them, many of them.
And then we did that for how many weeks? Like a couple of months?
Yeah.
A couple of weeks. And then we're like, yeah, actually,
not working.
it is
No.
not predictable at
Yeah.
all. Like you could spend weeks bidding for a job. And then the next one takes months. The next one takes 2 days. The rates were also not fixed. It was hard to build a repeatable model from there. And then we evolved that into, okay, let's actually get smaller companies that are going to pay a recurring amount for these engineers. And then at first, the kinds of people that were hiring the devs were small, like solo entrepreneurs, right? Basically. And we're like, yeah, maybe these people are not as stable. Let's actually work with tech companies. And we worked with smaller tech companies. Then we're like, okay, want more consistent revenue, so let's work with bigger companies. Then we found out that bigger companies want senior engineers. Right. They're like, yeah, it's gonna take 3 years for the Andela engineer who joined through the training program to get. So we started hiring senior engineers directly into the program. And then more and more iterations, and today Andela is a platform that has over 150,000 talents available on the network in 138 or so countries. Very, very different from where we started, but like the North Star has remained.
Yeah. Talent and opportunity.
Yeah.
What do you wish somebody had told you before you before you decided to drop out of your PhD program?
It's a really great question. Nad, Bryce, I'm thinking.
What I wish someone had told me, and I don't know. Well,
so there's some things that we just so here's some things that we did. I'm not directly answering your question, but we like celebrated the wins, like every little. I remember like those karaoke nights where we were broke, like we had nothing else, but it was almost more fun than raising these huge rounds later where all the pressure of it was already on us. We quickly recognized that this having very, very close teams that, wanted to be together and wanted to spend time together were just, absolutely essential. And some of that was like by design and some of that was luck. So I wish I had, but we did, like we saw it, we jumped on top of it. I think some of the things I would have told myself is like, of course you're going to cling so tightly to the parts of the model that you love, but, look at the stats of pivots that every major company has had to make. Like, so a lot of it is your own expectation. Hey, my role is going to change constantly. Don't be surprised when that happens. I think like the heartbreak or the, very personal nature of changing the model was just like, I wish I had had more reasonable expectations for, okay, there's going to be 17 pivots along the way. This is number 3. I think that was tough, but maybe setting that expectation.
Change.
And like really like core business model pivoting is a thing that but then when it's happening to you, it feels
it feels not so good.
And then you have 100 developers who are very unhappy and disappointed, and
I feel like yeah, like I wish somebody had told me that growth is that the like personal growth and like as you're going through a startup is at the boundary of discomfort.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I learned throughout the journey. But had I known that in the beginning, I'd have been much more open to being to be uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable.
Because that's really when you're stretching yourself and you're growing really rapidly. And that goes along with every other employee. And as Christina was mentioning, like the management level, I think one of the things that happened as the company was growing so rapidly and changing constantly, it required the employees to grow also. But it wasn't always clear and communicated to them of that requirement. So I think that's something that I wish
I don't think. I mean, to be fair, I don't think even we knew.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think we definitely underestimated the amount of
Yeah.
personal growth required
Yes.
Yeah.
in order to keep up with the business that was growing that fast,
Yeah.
right?
And
You
even
know,
though we saw it and felt it every day, I think that the extraordinary amount of ownership that the earliest fellows took, it was like a massive power that fueled it. And it was like we should have been talking to them all the time about the core business model.
Yeah.
I think they just felt like frequently surprised. And I think our intention absolutely was we're going to paddle so fast under the water and that we were
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
make it, you know, and we just,
Yeah.
we should have let them in more.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour, so don't worry, we won't be here for that much more longer. But one of the things is like, so one of the questions from founders that we that we spoke to ahead of this, the question was like, normally most teams don't have like 6 co-founders, right?
Yeah.
So which it's usually much smaller teams. But so how did we handle disagreement and conflicts? How do we come to consensus on big decisions?
Sure, there are plenty of times we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that so we've talked a lot about that early energy. I think part of the reason why it worked is that we had very technical people and very non-technical people.
Yeah, business
We
people.
had, cutting edge, ed tech US based entrepreneur. We had me that had been focused on, talent on the continent in various ways of youth employment. Like our skill sets coming in were very complementary and very different. And I think we pretty immediately really enjoyed and saw where people were like compulsive
Mhm.
doing their thing. You watch Nat in front of a classroom and you're like,
I trust him.
yes. You watch, Bryce leading the engineering team and you're like, yep, that man's in his element, you and Jeremy like
Mhm.
working your networks and rooms to get people to apply and think about investing and me, I'm like, I walked off the planes. I mean, I took 24 trips to the continent in our first 2 years of building Andela.
Wow.
What was I doing? I don't even know how I did it. And I would walk off the plane and just be so pumped.
Yeah.
Like jet lag, like had no effect on me. It was just like walk out with our developers and it was like this adrenaline rush. And so I think we were lucky in that we played to each other's strengths. And when you grow quickly,
Yeah.
there was like amazing need for
Yeah.
6 people across the business that were that North Star aligned.
Yeah.
It worked, and I'm sure there were painful times of disagreement. But in my head, I was just like so delighted to look at another part of the business and see somebody there that I knew and trusted. And
This person got it.
yeah, they got it.
Yeah.
And at night we can call each other and have like the real honest conversation.
Yeah, I think I the fact that we had so like diverse set of skill sets and different backgrounds, and we had built enough trust to be able to advocate for what we really cared about. And it's like, for example, Christina was really pushing for having more female talent, like the all female class, and myself and I were really pushing for the developer experience, like the tools that they're using and things like that, because we come from an engineering background. So like everybody having that diversity and bringing that to the table, and then having the trust build where we're able to push for the things that we care about, that we think it's valuable to bring, was really, I think, important as we had such a big group of partners.
Yeah. So we did scale to quite a number of countries in a relatively short period of time. Um, you know, how did we handle that expansion, and what lessons did you learn in that process of expanding to multiple African countries? I think we're like one of the first, I would say, tech startups that really before then, you maybe apart from Jumia, you really just had like single country startups.
Yeah, man, I wish I would love to have the time to write down the lessons from this. But we were, absolutely follow the talent every time. So a couple things that we did really well was we started in an operationally complex place, and then we got our operations chops down. Like, it was much easier to go elsewhere.
You
If we'd
started
done
in
it in the
Lagos.
reverse. We started in
in Africa for
away.
beginners.
And we brought our investors along on that ride. We're like, yeah, it's operational complex, but that we can do. What we can't do is, recreate this excitement and energy around the talent side. Yeah, we're going to deal with the operational complexity because the talent's so amazing. So that was like first thing was like, yep, go to Lagos, get operationally excellent people, and get your processes and systems down there. Then we moved over to Kenya, and the Kenya lesson was absolutely follow the talent. We launched applications in Ghana and South Africa and Kenya. And we said, who wants to be like, where do you want us to come? We got 10-1 the amount of applicants. And by the way, the genius behind that was all EGL. Where do we launch? Evan Greenlow. Now at Recidivist. Just an unbelievable data analytics person that helped us really shape the company. So we followed like the applicants and the numbers. Then in Uganda, Wambui had come in from ThoughtWorks. She had a bunch of senior engineers there. The IFC gave us a small grant to help us explore there. So in each place, there was really a competitive advantage to going to that location. And then I'll just say one last thing and then I'll shut up. Is like we found country directors that were going to lay down on the tracks for the talent in that country where that was already their personal mission, where that was already who they were. And we got to align, our mission and brand with their personal one. And we really set it up for them to be a true decision maker. And every major decision with the senior team was like, yeah, but can we operationalize it? Like we have to consider, that culture and that, place of business. And so our country director strategy, I think was, incredible.
Yeah. That was great. For two more questions. If you were to do all of this all over again, right? What's the part you absolutely don't want to do, and what's the part you absolutely want to do?
I'm going to answer a different question.
Yeah.
We should have started a fund
in Andela's.
Andela starting company. Like we should in year 2.
Yeah.
Even if we were just putting aside like 1-2%, I know, focus. And we talked to our investors about it because we saw it.
Yeah.
Right? We saw it, but man,
I did that and I made some good money.
Yes. All personally, I'm invested in, 2 people in this room and a third one when he starts. And if our other 2 people were here, then I would be invested.
Yeah. It's always a yes when it's Andela, folks. Always a yes.
But yes. Yeah. Okay. So I think, you guys start. That was my answer.
What are we gonna do?
What would you do? Like, if we're doing this all over again, what parts do you would you love doing, and what parts would you not want to do?
I would do it all.
Yeah.
It's like
I'll run it back.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's the only way to have come through.
Yeah.
That way. I mean, there's individual decisions, but man, I mean, look at us. The company is huge and thriving. All of us are still on this talent journey, but in different ways.
Yeah.
It's like, I think we were forged in fire, and today we are, and what we're doing today is because of that exact experience.
Yeah. I mean, one question I have is that, 10 years after, what's the most vivid picture of impact of this, of doing all of this? Like, it's very rare that you build something that you get to see like real impact like in your lifetime? I think for me it was the day GMT told me he was moving to Germany. I was just like, what? I was like, what?
I have a similar moment in
Yeah.
Germany. I was visiting my brother
Yeah.
who lives in Germany, and I was walking down the street with my brother and my sister-in-law. And one guy saw me and he started waving, but he was kind of shy. So he was like waving and then he walks past us. And my brother turns around and was like, come, do you know him? And he's like, oh, yeah. You're one of the Andela co-founders. And it was like, thank you. He was like, Andela has completely transformed my professional career. Like I went through the Andela program and I'm here now in Germany. Like I live here now. I work for a startup in Germany. And like that was like mind blown to me that like in random street in Germany, this person that I never met him personally, but he's gone through the program and was like just
Yeah.
talent
So
and
cool.
opportunity.
What's yours,
I mean,
Mama Sass?
yeah, so now I'm chairing the alumni network, and I would say where like these stories, I mean, I hear a new startup. Last night we just sat and talked about 5 startups, all of which I want to invest in. But this, somebody who came through the Andela learning community, and that is just incredible. So we have the mafia that is like in leadership positions. We've had a bunch of people go to, Harvard Business School that were like the HR associate in Lagos is going to Harvard Business School and is now in London. There's a huge group in Germany. We've had multiple people do master's degree programs. We have an Obama fellow in the first and maybe the third cohort that they were ever in. Uganda, Edmund from Uganda was there. We have Johnny Fallis started a Better Business Bureau for the LGBTQ community across Africa and Kenya. And these stories, they just come up every day. It's like we set out to do this thing to be bigger than all of us, and it's incredible to see where people are now. But they're all collaborating. They're all talking like we were a magnet for people with similar values, and that to me is extraordinary. I mean, we're doing this big celebration tonight. I bet you everyone in that room is like somehow working with, collaborating with, investing in another Andelan.
Yeah, impact. So I live in Lagos. I still live in Lagos, right? So
Your parents are still bummed about that.
Yeah. That one-way ticket never got back. Never got a return.
I still remember the very first weekend after getting to Lagos, and he took me to CC Hub.
Yeah.
And I saw what was the tech community at that time. Still very new, still nascent, small. I'll just use my own words. Tech didn't have swag then.
Matt Dyer single-handedly brought the swag.
It was kind of lame, and we literally saw how tech became one of the most desired professions, and not just for the optics, because of its power to transform people's economic reality. And also that thing that we used to say, the brilliance is evenly distributed, opportunity is not. I think we really transformed how people started thinking about where opportunity existed.
Yeah.
Because now you have everyone is thinking globally.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that if I'm good enough, I can work anywhere and I can have impact anywhere. And that is a culture that we got to
You brought to spread.
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
It's so true. You know what it reminds me? The analogy I'd give is like in the London, like amazing pop scene of the Stones and the Beatles, and rock and roll was awesome, but then Led Zeppelin showed up. It was everyone was like, "Who are these clowns?" And then they just rocked people's faces off for 3 hours straight. They were the new kids on the block, and very much I felt like these guys were like, "What are these? Like, who is it now? What are they doing over there?" And then all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, that's where it's happening. Look at what's going on the rooftop of Andela." We were like, "Yep, coming for all of you." Yes.
Amazing. I mean, these are. I mean, it's just incredible to see the impact. And tonight we'll have an opportunity to really celebrate it as a community, and and do it. So one question is the next 10 years. What are your wishes? What are your hopes for not just Andela, but the entire tech ecosystem in Africa over the next 10 years?
Well, we can wish, right?
Yeah.
Let me wish. Make wishes.
Yeah.
Right now, I was telling a friend this the other day that in our ecosystem, it feels like we've gone from playing a team sport to an individual sport. So it's less about the community and it's more about individuals. Everyone is optimizing themselves. I don't know if it's because I'm living under a rock, but it definitely doesn't feel as though people are out there creating communities or running communities to support each other and to help each other grow. That's something I would love to see. I'd love to see more of. I'll also love to see things that make it easier for people to acquire these skills. I think it was a very important decision for Andela to make to stop our formal training program, and it made the business much more healthier. And I would love to see a solution that actually cracks that talent development piece in a way that is scalable and just like democratizes access to
Everybody.
to tech skill acquisition. That would be dope.
Yeah. Bryce, sir.
Yeah, I would love to see more talent development, because I think what Andela has shown me is that the talent is there. The talent is there, and it's not just technical skills or software development skills, just across the board. In the arts, in the manufacturing, like anything, I think the raw talent is there. So in the next 10 years, I would really love to see a lot more of that. How do we democratize like that talent acquisition? Oh, sorry, talent development, and really creating and generating more opportunities for Africans across the different industries.
Mama Sass?
I want IPOs of Andela.
Let's do it.
I want ministers of ICT
Yeah.
in multiple countries. I want there to be every single successful tech company has like Andela DNA in there. And we used to say to our developers, like, you'll never be the person that's like, oh, I just write the code. We're like, no, you are the change maker. Like, there are implications of what you're doing, have, really, you can't, think about the whole picture and what you're building and how it contributes. So, I mean, I think we set out to be like, we want to make Andela, we want to make it synonymous with Africa and talent. And now we want to make it synonymous with global and talent and global citizens that are thinking about leveling people up, ladders to build everybody up all over the place. So that's what I want to see. A blast of Andelans in incredible leadership positions, making the hard decisions and improving the world, and then a bunch of successful companies in those. We already see it. I mean, you are still the center of that tech ecosystem in Lagos, and you've seeded so many other companies. And let's do that in Uganda. Let's do it again in in Kenya, and all over the place. So more and
fantastic. Final words for the entrepreneurs that are listening to this. Any final words?
Follow your heart.
Follow your heart. That's how this all starts.
Keep moving.
Keep going. Keep building.
Yeah, we used to say all heart, all hustle.
All heart, all hustle. And we still say this is Africa. And this is Andela.
This is Andela. This is Africa. This is the future. This is excellence. This is swag.
Yeah. This is swag. This is swag. Amazing. Well, thank you.
Love you.
And we love you.
All those entrepreneurs. Like,
Yeah.
we're so cheering for you and pulling for you. And when and if we have time and bandwidth, we want to help. Like,
100%.
yes, we were you, and we're just all behind you.
Thank you. This was such an amazing hour. Thank you so much for giving us your time and for sharing from your hearts about this incredible journey that is Andela. It's not ending. We're still out there, and the seeds that we've sown are growing and will continue to grow. So thank you so much for listening, and it's a wrap.
TIA.